Good evening, everybody. This is Peter Noonan. I'm the superintendent of schools here in the City of Falls Church, and it is my privilege and honor to be able to speak to you this evening regarding back to school and school opening for 2021. I don't know about you, but I am really excited to be able to start school next week and excited to see our students back. And this week has been filled with lots of action and activities with not just our staff and folks back, but also with our students. So as I go through tonight, I wanted to just begin with a huge thank you for one joining us tonight and for being great community members. Over the past 18 months, really more, we have done a lot together in this community, and it's taken the community and all of us to really come together to make what was and continues to be a fairly terrible situation as good as it possibly can. So tonight's town hall and COVID mitigation is going to look a little different than normal back to school events that we would have, or back to school town halls, in that a lot of the information that's going to be shared this evening will be around COVID mitigation. Normally we would be talking about, and we'll talk about safe routes to school, and we'll talk about lunches, and we'll talk about those things. But tonight you'll get a heavy dose of COVID mitigation, because that's really, I think, what a lot of people are really anxious and wanting to know about. This session is being recorded, so if for some reason you need to bow out at some point as part of this town hall, know that we will post it tomorrow on our website, so you can revisit it and re-listen anytime. I really appreciate many of you that did drop questions for us into our reopening at fccps.org site. I do have a number of questions that were raised that I think will be answered through the presentation this evening. And then I have a few at the end, and we'll just make sure that we got to all of them. The information that I'll share with you tonight is coming from a variety of different sources and a variety of different agencies that we have vetted much of our information around. And I want to make sure that everybody on the YouTube tonight, and if you watch it in the future, understands that the information that we're going to share, or I'm going to share, does come from the CDC, Center for Disease Control, the Virginia Department of Health, the Virginia Department of Education, the Fairfax County Health District, and also is derived in part from the Code of Virginia. So there is a lot of vetting and a lot of resource that has gone into the decisions that we continue to make here as a school division. But I also want to be super clear that in any of these circumstances, and we've seen it along the way, things change. Whether data changes, whether information changes, whether a new order comes out from somewhere. So I do hope that you all will continue to remain flexible in your understanding of the school division when things do change. I'm most hopeful for this year and most optimistic that things will be very positive as we move forward. But because the most important thing of all to me is that we all have the same goal, and that goal is to bring our students back safely and securely into our buildings. We may have some disagreements along the way about how we do it, but I think it's important to know why we're doing what we're doing and where we're getting the information. But in the end, it's really going to take all of us as a collective to come together as a community and as a division to really make this work. With that as a backdrop, I'm going to work really diligently tonight to try to get through the information in an hour, and perhaps even shorter, we'll see. But this is a very dense presentation. I also want to manage your expectations up front to know that I recognize this is not the greatest format for learning information, whether you're a student or an adult, but I do think it's good that we get the information out to you, and really appreciate you being here. So with that, I'm gonna dive into the presentation. I'm gonna share my screen, make sure I share the right screen here. And then we will start the presentation. So again, welcome to the 21-22 school year. We are super excited to be here and be able to share with you some information tonight. Our goal, or my goal for this evening, is to provide you with updates for this school year, but also to, in many ways, provide you with some situational awareness around what we're experiencing and what you're experiencing from what we've heard just in conversations with community members, and also help gain an understanding as we all navigate through this circumstance this coming fall and within the current context of where we are with respect to COVID. So before I do that, I do want to take a moment and one, reintroduce myself to many of you, but also take a moment to introduce myself to you. I haven't had the opportunity to do that in a couple of years because of COVID, but I think it's important that you all know who I am and how I think and how I sort of navigate the world and with whom. So let me start with this. I started as a classroom teacher, just many superintendents around the country. From there, I became a department chair in the area of special education. I was an assistant principal in 2 different schools before I got my first principalship. My first of 3, actually. I was a middle school principal in 2 different middle schools. I started my career in the Albuquerque public school system, and in 2001 moved to Virginia, became the principal at Lanier, which is now Katherine Johnson Middle School in Fairfax. I also was the principal at Centerville High School in Fairfax County, was fortunate enough to rise to the level of regional assistant superintendent, and then ultimately chief academic officer in Fairfax County. And from there became a superintendent in the city of Fairfax. And 4.5 years ago, roughly, I came to the City of Falls Church. And this is the by far best position I've ever had. It's the most caring community. We have the best teachers, we have the best kids, and I couldn't be more pleased to be where I am here in the City of Falls Church, working with all of you. But I'm also a couple other things. I'm a father of really 3 amazing and awesome kids. I'm a former professor at George Mason University. I've done some adjunct work at Virginia Tech and also at UVA. I'm a pretty avid golfer. I don't play very often. As you can imagine, superintendents don't get out a whole lot, especially during COVID. I consider myself a relatively decent cook, but you'd have to ask around those people that I cook for. I love to travel, which has been a real bummer during all of this COVID crisis, not being able to travel and do some of the things that we love as a family. Yes, I'm a former cake decorator. I worked for Baskin Robbins as a youth, and I was the cake decorator for Baskin Robbins. And so I've had a lot of different jobs in my life, including that. I'm a very below average guitarist, but I'm hoping to take some lessons soon. But more than anything, whoops, let me go back. I'm your neighbor. I recently moved to the City of Falls Church from the town of Clifton, where I raised our first 2 kids and lived for 20 years. But I'm happily now your neighbor here in the City of Falls Church. And I'm also, and most importantly, Falls Church City Public Schools parent. And I have a rising 7th grader, and we're very excited for her to start at Henderson. Let me introduce you to my family because, again, I want to give you a sense of who I am. In the lower left, start there, is my daughter, Emily, just recently graduated from the University of Virginia. She is currently working as a clinical research coordinator down at the University Hospital with plans to go to medical school. To her left, and more towards the middle, is my son, Brylan, and it's Bryln. And Brylan is a freshman at Wagner College in New York, where he's playing Division I football. And also, he hasn't figured it out yet, but he's also going to have to go to school in about a week. And we're anxious for him to get back to school. And on the far right is our daughter, Betsy. And Betsy is our rising 7th grader here at Henderson. And we're very excited for her. More towards the middle is myself and my partner, Dr. Bethany Latique. Dr. Latique is a professor at George Mason University, and that is us on the backside of a really great hike in Colorado. And then up on the top there is our extended family. Bethany is a twin, it's her twin brother, their family, and we are at the beach. And that is the one thing we were able to do this summer and travel. But just wanted to share with you my family, since we are together now in the City of Falls Church and are part of your community and are very excited about that. So let's dive into the impact of the Delta variant and should we be concerned about it? And I think that's a rhetorical question because obviously we are all very concerned about it. It is a highly contagious variant of the disease, as you all know. It does have the highest risk to those that are unvaccinated. In fact, 98% of the cases in the Fairfax County Health District are to people that are unvaccinated, but the northern region, which we live in, is starting to see some substantial rates of community spread. In our health district, the Fairfax County Health District, which I think all know the City of Falls Church is part of, just moved into the moderate transmission category, which gives us pause. But one thing, or a couple things I want to share that I think are really important. And the first is that we had 0 cases during summer school and extended school year this year. We're very proud of that, not just as a school system, but as a community as a whole, because it means that the mitigation strategies that we're putting in place are actually working, up to and including vaccinations. And so for all of you that are eligible to be vaccinated, we appreciate that very much. And we will continue to push towards all mitigation strategies. Last year, we were able to vaccinate 96% of our staff members, and currently are collecting final data for the year on our total number of staff that are vaccinated. We have a survey out. We've gotten almost 400 responses to our survey, and currently we have three staff members that haven't been vaccinated. So our vaccination rate among staff is exceedingly high, and we do plan to work with those employees that haven't been vaccinated to support them to get vaccinated and work with them to find ways to ensure that they're keeping our students safe and themselves safe, which will likely mean some testing. 80% of the Falls Church City population, ages 12 to 15, have had at least 1 dose of the vaccination. And I suspect that number is going up. This is as of about a week and a half ago. And 94% of age 16 to 17 in the City of Falls Church have also been vaccinated. And these data come from the Fairfax County Health District. But those are extraordinary numbers, and it gives us a lot to be proud of here in the City of Falls Church. We are looking at the CDC, as I mentioned before, and they have provided some new recommendations for school mitigation practices. And tonight I'd like to go through some of those. I want to start with this idea of layers of protection. I think everybody at this point has sort of heard the Swiss cheese analogy. When you buy or get a square of Swiss cheese, there's holes all through the Swiss cheese. But if you layer one piece on top of another and on top of another and on top of another, ultimately you can't see through the Swiss cheese. We see each piece of Swiss cheese as one layer of protection, one thing that we can do to help with the mitigation around COVID. So what you'll see tonight are all of the different layers of protection that we intend to put in place when our students walk through the door a week from today. And so let me start with this, and that is masking. We believe strongly that students should be masked, and that's all students and all staff when they're inside the building. That comes not only from the CDC, but the state of Virginia's health commissioner recently also put out an order that all students K-12 must be wearing a mask. We had already put out that we were going to do it anyway because we just think it's the right thing to do. But we do know that there are some students that may have ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act exemptions, or some that may be medical exemptions, and some that may be developmental exemptions. And we'll work with those families and work with those students. But Like last year, we saw very few of those, if any. We have plenty of masks, so if there is a need for you or your family to get some masks, we certainly can get them for you. You can either jump on School Dude, which you can find on our website app or in an app, or you can go to our school health assistants, and those are the folks that are in the rooms that we once called the nurse's office. Masking outside is not required for staff or students. It's a large event. And then in those cases where we're in very tight quarters, our advice, you don't have to follow it, but our advice is that unvaccinated people wear masks whenever possible. You have to do it indoors, but the hope is that you would do it outdoors. And those of you that are vaccinated, when you're outdoors around people that you may not know, we would advise that you consider wearing a mask, because the more we can put this other layer of mitigation in place, the better off we all are. We are going to require consistent and correct use of masks. We did get a question, what are we going to do to enforce this? I'll tell you that each school has a COVID mitigation team, a COVID team, and those COVID teams are working with teachers to talk about how to work with students and work with staff to ensure that there's consistent and correct mask usage. If students flat out decide not to mask, unfortunately, they won't be able to stay in school. So we're hoping that everybody will follow the rules. And we had zero problems last year in the City of Falls Church. So I don't anticipate that there will be any problems this year with masking. And our hope is that this is a temporary condition, that hopefully over time, the CDC will change their recommendations and the health commissioner will lift the order. We are going to continue to maintain physical distancing of 3 feet wherever possible. That will allow us then to hold more students in classrooms and also have more students on buses. We plan to create additional space for our students to eat lunch. I know at our 2 elementary schools in particular, we are creating some additional spaces for students to eat outside, not unlike what we did last year. That was a really successful strategy. And as long as the weather is nice and it's warm enough, we certainly want to keep doing that. With respect to water, we are asking that students bring refillable water bottles. The water fountains and faucets aren't going to be available again, just like at the end of last year. Next is we're promoting, again, those vaccinations for all eligible students and adults. You'll note, as I said earlier, our numbers are extremely high in the City of Falls Church, and we're very proud of it. But there still is a core group of people that we would love to see get the vaccine. So hopefully you'll do that, particularly now that Pfizer has formally received FDA authorization and permission. They had authorization, now it's official moving forward. Anyone that's ill or having symptoms, we are asking that they remain home, and we'll talk about that in a second, and that you use as parents your staff student health screening checklist daily. This is that checklist, and you may remember it from last year. There are a number of questions on each of these, but we really ask that you think about these symptoms before you send your student to school. I think we're in a different day. There may have been a time 3 or 4 years ago where you might have said, oh, you're feeling a little under the weather here, take a Tylenol, you'll feel better, and I'll see you after school. We hope that didn't happen, but it might have. We're all parents. But this is a very different day. So we really are trying to maintain the health and safety of all of our students, particularly around this COVID and Delta variant. So if there is an incident where a student has a cough or runny nose or congestion, we ask that you keep them home and just get them checked out before they're sent back to school. So it's important to remember that both staff and students, regardless of your vaccine status, must be symptom-free and provide a clearance letter from a healthcare provider or a recent negative test result in order to return from school if you're out or ill with symptoms and sent home. So in the event, for example, that your child wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I have a headache and the sniffles, and you're saying to yourself, I know that this is allergies. It's the allergy season. It's not COVID, I'm sure. We still are asking that you at least keep your child home and get a note you can get a note from your doctor that day. You can go to one of the clinics nearby just to get clearance. Your student wouldn't be out that long, and it would be a good safety check for all of us to make sure that students aren't coming into school sick. Some other mitigation, we are going to continue to stick with our frequent hand washing and hand sanitizing. All of the hand sanitizing stations that were in the building are still there and strategically placed throughout so that students that are coming in can sanitize their hand, or going up the stairs or near the bathrooms or near classrooms or the cafeteria. We do intend to deep clean the buildings every night as we have before. We're going to limit non-essential visitors and continue to utilize online meeting structures when appropriate. So we're asking for your help on that, particularly our elementary parents. I know it's been really hard to not be a room parent or not being able to go into the classroom to support your students, but for now, if we could just limit the number of people that are coming into the building, I think it will really help us down the line move through this more quickly. And then also, as I mentioned before, we do still have the COVID response teams in place at each school to support any contact tracing or mitigate and monitor mitigation throughout the schools. And we have a really nice rubric that we've put together. So these COVID mitigation teams go around, they observe, they see, and make sure that our mitigation strategies are being done with fidelity to ensure the safety and security of our students. We do continue to have the public health nurse support, and we're very thankful to the Fairfax County Health Department for that. We have our SHAWs, which are school health aides there, but we do have a public health nurse that is assigned to the City of Falls Church. We are fully staffed in our clinics with those SHAWs, and they have been trained by the health department, and we'll continue to work closely with Fairfax County Health Department around contact tracing, consultation, and testing as needed. And we will continue to monitor data closely, particularly in the area of transmission in schools. And again, happy to report that last year we had near zero transmission in schools, and that was at the end of the year through the spring. And that's because we really all did a really great job with mitigation, and that includes parents and students and teachers and staff. So a little bit of information about the school health clinics and the isolation rooms. First of all, we have them. And if a student is sent there and screened by that SHAW and has some sort of symptom that's associated with COVID, they're going to be placed in an isolation room. And it's not a scary place. We have them set up nicely. We had several students that had to go into them last year, but they are places where the student is not in contact with others. And we do that gently, we do that kindly, we do it empathically and sympathetically. So students aren't scared if they end up in the isolation room because of having a symptom. At that point, we would ask that the family come pick up to secure medical care and testing. And if for some reason you're not able to do that, secure the testing and the like, we have social workers here in the system that absolutely are ready, willing, and able to support you as families get all of your needs met with respect to medical care, testing, and the like. And then the health clinics, which are different than the isolation rooms, are really reserved more for the routine. So you might remember when you were a kid, if you bumped your arm, you went and you got a bag of ice and you put it on, or you cut your finger and you got a Band-Aid. Those are the kinds of activities and actions that happen in the health clinics, while the isolation room really is specifically designed for students that have COVID-like symptoms. So let's talk about pausing isolation and quarantine. Pause is a short and temporary, usually only 48 hours of time, break in the action. And that is in the event that there is, for example, someone who is a positive, and it turns out that the student or the teacher tests positive through a PCR test, then the health department would ask us to pause anyone who's a close contact with that person who was positive, and they would begin their contact tracing episode. And once that contact tracing episode begins, within typically 48 hours, they give us information back and say, okay, these students need to stay home, these students can come back to school, this teacher needs to stay home, these students or this teacher can come back. That's what a pause is, just a very brief period of time for us to be able to do the work necessary to do the contact tracing. Isolation is a time where if you're a positive case, you're home for at least 10 days. And quarantining is anyone who's unvaccinated and exposed symptomatic. Those quarantines are for 14 days. And those, along with the isolation, are always done by the health department. Those are not our decisions. And I want to be really clear, those are not Falls Church City Public Schools decisions. Those are the health department decisions. And we will follow the direction of the health department when it comes to isolation and quarantining. You'll note at the bottom of the slide something that I think is important to note, and that is that this guidance continues to evolve as public health officials respond to the Delta variant and its impact on our communities. So again, I'm telling you all of this a week before school starts. I think it's the right time for all of this information, but there are some pieces that may change as time goes by, and hopefully it won't be too much and for the better. All right, anyone who's paused can't be on our school grounds for any reason. So let's say you get paused for 48 hours and you forgot your notebook, or you forgot your homework, or you forgot your laptop. We're not going to be able to have someone come on campus, that person who was paused, come back on campus to get that. And those staff and students aren't going to be released to return from that pause until the health department lifts that. Now, if a student leaves let's say they leave their lunchbox or their laptop, certainly somebody else can come get it. So I don't want to suggest that you can't retrieve items. I'm just saying that if you are one of the people that's positive, you can't come on campus. And then anyone who's quarantined can't come back for 14 days. And that actually has to come from the health department and that release. And thank you in advance for your support in that. I know that is not an easy thing to have to do, but it's the game we're playing right now, or the reality we're facing. It's not a game, but it's the reality that we're facing right now. All right, all positive cases will isolate for 10 days. As I said before, the contact tracing will be initiated, and then all of that guidance comes from the health department. So let's talk about what happens if adults are exposed in a school setting. And it's different between adults and students. And I want to share with you tonight the distinguishing aspects of both. And first is the vaccinated adult. So there's 3 different variants here, right? You've got vaccinated adult, really 4, unvaccinated adult, vaccinated student, unvaccinated student. Each of those has a different treatment, if you will, in the case of an exposure. So if an adult is exposed, so think teacher, think custodian, think bus driver, if they're vaccinated, they don't have to pause or quarantine when they're exposed if they do not have symptoms. They will be offered a test from the health department, but they also then need to confirm their vaccination status with the Fairfax County Health Department and with the school system. And that is new. In the past, the Fairfax County Health Department, it was good enough to say, I'm vaccinated, but now you actually have to show your card to prove that you're vaccinated. But the big idea here is if you're vaccinated, you don't have any symptoms, but you were exposed, you don't have to quarantine. But you must pause or quarantine if you're exposed and you're having symptoms. And that exposure that decision would come from the health department. So what's interesting here is at the bottom, the exposure for adults remains 6 feet for 15 cumulative minutes in a 24-hour period, regardless of masking. So that is not necessarily new, but you'll see something new when we get to the students. Unvaccinated staff. And let me pause here just for a second. We're collecting data right now on our staff that are vaccinated. To date, we've had 350 responses. And of the 350 responses, we've had 3, I think I said this before, 3 staff members that are not vaccinated. So we have a very small number of people in the City of Falls Church schools that are unvaccinated. But if they are unvaccinated and they are exposed, then they must pause quarantine if exposed, regardless of symptoms or masking. And that's the same as it was before. So let me talk about, and one other note here, if you've had COVID in the last 90 days, and are exposed, you don't have to pause or quarantine if you're not showing symptoms, but you will be offered testing from the health department. For those of you that have children, let's talk about students because this is new. Vaccinated students do not have to pause when exposed to a positive case so long as they don't have any symptoms. They too will be offered testing from the health department. And that confirmation of vaccination is going to have to be provided. So please keep your child's vaccine card handy in the event that they are part of a contact tracing incident. They will pause and quarantine if they are having symptoms and can't return until they're cleared from the health department. This is the change here. Exposure for students in school is now 3 feet with 15 cumulative minutes in 24-hour period. This does not apply to the adults. The adults are still 6 feet in 15 minutes. And this was a change that was made at the end of this, right at the beginning of the summer, in an effort to try to get students back into school. So reducing that 6 foot to 3 feet for contact tracing. In terms of unvaccinated students, you do not pause or quarantine when exposed to a positive if you don't have symptoms and both the positive case and contact were fully masked. So this is why wearing a mask is going to be really important. So let's say that I'm not a vaccinated student and I'm sitting 3 feet away from another non-vaccinated student. If I test positive, even though I'm unvaccinated, and the other person is masked and I'm masked, the other person does not have to quarantine. So it's going to be really important that we wear our masks and we wear them appropriately up over our nose and around our mouths. You will pause or quarantine if you're exposed to a positive, if you're having symptoms, if you were unmasked, or you're closer than 3 feet for a cumulative 15 minutes. And again, I'm going to put all of this information on the web so you can have this presentation after tonight, but I wanted to make sure you saw it with some context. All right, given the potential for pauses and quarantines, we are making an operational decision internally that students will be taking their devices home with them each day. And this is going to be really important information for parents to expect that device and help us out just getting it charged every night. If you could please make a special place for your student to charge their device when they come home so that when they do return to school the next day, it is charged. We would really appreciate that very much. So thank you for your help with that. All right, I mentioned this, and this is that the proof of vaccination for the health department is going to be necessary in any contact tracing investigation. So again, keep your cards handy for those that have had the vaccination. All right, our goal has been and continues to be full-time in-person learning for all of our students and providing that in a very safe way or the safest way possible for all of our students. We are anticipating that next Monday, all of our levels, all of our grades, all of our students are going to return to 5 days a week. We will not be podding or hubbing like we were at the secondary campus at the end of last year. Some of you might remember some students were sitting in hallways while other students were in classroom because that social distancing and contact tracing guidance changed to 3 feet. We are able to get our students into classes. All athletics and activities are going to follow the CDC's guidelines and also the Virginia High School League's guidance. And we won't run field trips unnecessarily, but we will run them for VHSL and school-sponsored events. Not that we ever ran them unnecessarily before, but we're going to scrutinize field trips a little bit more. And part of the reason for all of this that you've seen leading up to this point is that we have one common goal, and that is to keep our students in school. We really want our students here every single day. So we need to all stay vigilant in working through this. It is obviously a changing landscape. And again, we appreciate your understanding, your patience, and your flexibility. So some of you may ask questions about shared material. And we're going to wash and sanitize our hands at all levels before and after use. We're going to wipe down all of the materials at JTP, Mount Daniel, Oak Street, Mary Ellen Henderson. There's a routine cleaning schedule at the high school. We're going to limit sharing as much as possible. and we're going to deep clean all of the materials and supplies immediately if an exposure occurs. One of the things that you'll see at Meridian High School that is a little bit different is that we are looking at this and trying to be a little nuanced in the way that we are observing some of these mitigation strategies. We know that our secondary students have all been, not all been vaccinated, but at a high rate of vaccination. So the vigilance in sanitizing, for example, beakers and science equipment and some other things are not as equally necessary at the secondary level as they are at, for example, the preschool. It doesn't mean we're not going to do it. We absolutely are going to do it, but we'll do it on our routine cleaning schedules. Temperature checks. We will continue the protocol of checking all temperatures at Jessie Thackeray upon entering the building. We won't do temperature checks on the bus. At Mount Daniel and at Oak Street, we'll continue the process of random checks when students are in the building. We aren't going to temperature check on the bus, and we'll reevaluate this practice each month. And at Henderson and at Meridian, we are only going to check temperatures when students are feeling ill or maybe symptomatic. And part of the reason that we are changing slightly on this temperature checking is that we have found from the Fairfax County Health District and the CDC that it isn't necessarily the best use of practice or time as one of those pieces of Swiss cheese as students are coming in. And we weren't seeing any temperatures last year. And that again was a testament to not having very many kids ill. So moving forward, we are going to limit temperature checks to some degree at these different school sites. Sports and activities. Let me talk about this for a second. Outdoor sports and activities. Masking is not required for outdoor sports. That includes physical education that's happening outside. So when you're outside, you won't be required to mask. Anyone who is unvaccinated is advised to wear a mask to all outdoor events and activities, and that's more of a parent and student request. Indoor sports activities, masking is required for our indoor sporting events activities for all of our spectators. And then our athletes, and fortunately, we only have one indoor sport right now, and that's volleyball. But our students that are vaccinated who can provide proof of vaccination for that volleyball team are not going to have to wear masks while playing. However, opposing teams that come here, anyone who's not vaccinated will have to wear a mask. And they're going to have to provide that proof of vaccination status. If an opposing team does not play by the rules that we set up around masking, then they are subject to a forfeit for the game. So we're hoping that everyone will come with their proof of vaccination, and if they don't have their proof of vaccination, that they'll wear a mask. But the big nugget here in terms of sports and after school activities is outside, no masks, inside, because it is a small group of girls that have been together for most of the last month, are not going to have to wear masks if they can prove that they're vaccinated. All right, virtual instruction. Virtual instruction is not being offered full-time as a viable instructional option for us here in the City of Falls Church Schools on a full-time basis for anyone, with the exception of our traditional high courses, which are at the middle and high school, or specific Virginia virtual courses that are available to secondary students. And there's a reason for this. And I want to take just a second to make sure everybody understands the rationale for it. First and foremost, all schools last year, by law that came out of the legislature and signed by the governor, are required to focus on in-person instruction and in-person learning 5 days a week, full time. So as a school system, we have targeted our resources towards getting our kids back full time. Does it mean that we won't offer any virtual instruction ever? Absolutely not. We are a small school system that's nimble enough to change should there be some sort of executive order to close, or should there be something that requires us to shut down. Then in that case, we would transition back into our online learning. But anything short of that, we will only be offering some live streaming, and I'll talk through that in just a second. Right here, actually. we have some limited live streaming. And here's where the limited live streaming is going to come in. For students K-12 and preschool is a different matter. So let me talk about just kindergarten through 12th grade. Any student that is out for a COVID illness, is medically homebound, or required to pause, isolate, or quarantine by the public health department is going to have an opportunity to live stream classes into your home and onto their device. This is going to be very different than what some people became accustomed to with concurrent instruction last. Concurrent instruction was a teaching model that was incredibly time intensive and very difficult for our teachers to pull off. Although they were able to do it, it was incredibly time consuming and really not easy to do. And that was they were setting up essentially two different types of lessons, one for online and one for face to face. And because we are ordered by the law now to open 5 days a week full time, and we're focusing our resources on that, the only way that we're going to offer any kind of technological solution is through this live streaming access, as I mentioned previously. And I'll show a continuum of use here in just a second. But preschool students who are unable to attend in person for any of the reasons listed above, whether it's COVID or medically homebound or for pausing, isolation, or quarantine, are going to be given resources to take home to work on. There won't be a live stream available for our preschool students. We didn't have to pause, quarantine, or isolate any of our preschool students last year, so I don't anticipate that. Let me say it this way. I don't anticipate we will, but we're prepared if we have to. And I think that's the way we're going about this year is expecting the best and preparing for the worst. So let me talk about the virtual instruction continuum a little bit, because I want to focus our energies here on the left-hand side of this continuum, and that is 5 full days of instruction. And this again is where we're putting all of our eggs, if you will. And while that's going on, in the case of a pause, which is that 48-hour pause due to potential COVID exposure, if your student is in a pause, then they will be able to live stream into their classrooms. If they are put into isolation, quarantine for 10 to 14 days, they will also be able to live stream into their classrooms. Now, one of the things we're all going to have to trust here is that our teachers are going to use their professional expertise and judgment in how to make that live streaming as supportive as possible for the students that aren't in class. I was a teacher. I work with our teachers all the time. And if you know our teachers in the City of Falls Church, nobody cares about your kids more than our teachers. And I suspect while they may be just simply offering live streaming, there's going to be an element of personalization that will come just because that's who our teachers are. So we're all going to have to trust that live streaming for those short periods of time that is available will be as good as it can be for the students that they're serving. On the rare occasion that the health department does require, for example, an entire classroom to pause or quarantine, that at that point in time, we will transition to whole class virtual instruction. So let's say, for example, I am a 5th grade teacher at Oak Street, and we had a couple of our students test positive. We've gone through contact tracing. The kids were all over, and the health department says, you know what, you're all close contacts. The entire 5th grade class has to quarantine for 10 days. Then I, as that 5th grade teacher, would lead instruction online with the entire class during that quarantine. So one of the ways you can think about it on this continuum is from minimal intensity of issues to maximum intensity of issues. The intensity of issues being obviously the Delta variant. So if we don't have any issues with Delta variant, we're going to be in full day, 5 days of instruction. And as we see some cases that come along, we'll make our way through the middle of the continuum, and hopefully we'll never get to the right-hand side of that continuum. But I want to be super clear that if your child is out, they will have access to a live stream and will remain connected to the classroom. It just may look a little bit different than it did last year. Some social emotional support. This is a very thick slide. I won't read through all of it. But one thing I want to be very clear about is that we are committed to supporting students, staff, and families with respect to social emotional health as we move through this year of recovery, because truly we are in many ways in a year of recovery. So in here, if you want to look at it when we post it, you'll see things like our SEL standards, our social emotional learning standards that came out from the Virginia Department of Health or Department of Education. We are working in the classrooms to do morning meetings and other activities that are associated with mental health, reconnection of students, feeling support, working with our counselors. We have crisis teams that are available that include social workers, psychologists, school counselors, and for staff, we have lots of opportunities for mentoring. We're doing a lot of training around signs of trauma in classrooms. We're doing some training around dealing with grief, how to talk to students as they return from the pandemic. We also offer an EASE program or an employee assistance program to our staff. And then for families, if you have any needs at all, we certainly are here to help support you as well. And you'll see on the right hand of this slide, there's mental health support in our parent university, which is a part of our website. So I would invite you to go to that. There's also a resource page for mental health and then some other social work connections as well. All right, so let's talk about something more mundane than the Delta variant. Let's talk about transportation and nutrition services. Although all of these are related to COVID, right? So buses, first of all, everyone has to stay masked on the bus. We are going to run the buses again this year with the windows down and ride as best we can limited to seats. But students do need to wear their masks on the bus. Students who live in the same household will be able to sit together if they want, and hopefully they will. Hopefully they'll want to. Buses will continue to be cleaned each night deeply, and we are going to maintain seating charts for contact tracing for pre-K through 5. Students can sit together in seats. We can go to a seat if we need to, and we likely will, because the bus rides are very short. And when we looked at loading the buses, probably more information than you want, but when we looked at loading the buses for the secondary students for grades 6 through 12, we'll load those buses, not unlike probably the elementary buses, 1 student per seat at a time until they're all full, and then we'll go to double up. And there'll be 2 to a seat, and the next seat will be 2 to a seat, and so on and so forth, which reduces the amount of contact with someone else, excuse me, within 3 feet of you. If you have any questions about transportation, please do visit our transportation page. Our elementary bus runs came out today, and hopefully you've seen those. I should have gotten a glass of water. Hopefully you've seen those, and the secondary bus routes will come out probably Wednesday of next week. We had to do some modifications of the secondary bus routes, but they will be out before school starts, I promise. All right, breakfast and lunch. It is available again this year to everyone, 100% of the students at no cost. And that is a consequence of some support that we've received from the FDA as part of their pandemic programs. We still ask, regardless of your need, that you do fill out a free and reduced lunch application. We do want to get the one from everyone. And that is because we do offer some other services beyond food services as a consequence of those free and reduced lunch applications. Please fill those out. I do want to take a minute to talk about lunches. I did mention that at the elementary schools, we will continue to eat outside this year. Hi, guardian angel, thank you. We will continue to eat outside this year at the elementary schools, and I know at the secondary schools, Ms. Hardy, Mr. Carey, and Mr. Sorensis have already made plans to spread out as well. So there will be more than 3 feet distance between students available for them to eat, and we will push those students to get further away, because we know, as you all know, that when you eat, you can't eat through your mask, so you have to drop your mask. And we know that that's where some concerns can happen. So we are going to create more space in the lunchroom and eating areas and use much more of our building for that. All right, so let me talk about suggested routes to school. If you've been by the high school recently, you're probably scared. And frankly, I am too, because I just don't see how they're going to get that done. But they promised me that there will be a safe route in front of that school by Monday of next week. And I'm going to trust in them that they have that together. If they don't, we have alternatives and backups. And so I want to make sure that everybody understands that for all of our schools, including our high school and middle school, we are committed to these safe routes to school. And so this summer, there was a great group of people that met together to talk about safe routes to school. We got input from city staff, our employees, parents, and students, and we'd like to thank Girl Scout Troop 2259 for helping us. But we took into account all of the different multiple modalities that people use to get to schools, and we created some safe routes to school. So I'll show those to you, but I also would invite you to look at the FCCPS transportation webpage because it does share some further information. We are updating the Oak Street Elementary Tiger Trail. We got new signs, they are in. And on Thursday, I believe, Vice Mayor Conley and also our community outreach person will be walking with the team to make sure that this gets put up in the right places. But we are refreshing all of the old routes and adding new routes. So we hope that our students will follow the sidewalks and routes through parks. And these routes were tested by Oak Street Elementary students and alumni. And hopefully you'll be able to follow those Oak Street Elementary Tiger Trail signs. And we are excited to have those up and ready likely on Thursday for the start of school. At the secondary campus, this is a multimodal approach that we're looking at because we have everyone from walkers to bikers, buses, kiss and ride, student cars, employees' cars, and we're also having some commuter traffic. So we know that there are a lot of people converging on the site all at the same time. But I do want to let everyone know at the secondary site that there are going to be safe ways to get in and out of the site throughout the construction, even when we're done, and we'll be done in about a month. But even when the new construction is going in for the 10-acre site. So we're going to ask that a couple of things, and let me break it down a little bit more in detail here, is we're hoping, we're requesting actually, and urging very strongly that all of our kids cross over at the Haycock cross right there by the Giant. That is the safest place to cross over as you come west towards the site. And there are some really great detailed instructions available. But you'll see a pink line and a blue line on here. And these are both walking routes to school and biking routes to school. And we really suggest that pedestrians and cyclists use that pink route as they're heading up towards Meridian and towards Mary Ellen Henderson. There's an existing walkway up there, and we're hoping that you will be able to use that, or we're hoping that you will use that. And there will be bike racks located at the entrance of both Meridian and at the front of Mary Ellen Henderson. If you do walk up Broad Street or Leesburg Pike, that's certainly an option as well. You just are more exposed to the traffic there along Leesburg Pike. And we would urge you to try to stay off that area as much as possible. Let me back up here just for a second. We are also asking that in terms of a kiss and ride, the kiss and ride for Meridian High School will be in the same place that the kiss and ride was last year at the end of the year. And that is at the old loop in front of the old high school. And the kiss and ride for Mary Ellen Henderson will be on Husky Trail or Husky Loop right in front of Mary Ellen Henderson. The good news here is at the end of last year, you can now take a right off of Leesburg Pike into the Henderson parking lot. So as you come down Leesburg Pike, take a right and then a left, and you can do your drop off there. But for Meridian students, we ask that you come along Haycock, come down to this area, drive up here and do your drop offs here. Whoops. One thing I will say, if you have both a middle and a high schooler, if you want to drop them off down here, they can both walk through the high school, and then the middle schooler can walk through the cafeteria to get to the middle school if they want to go that way. But there's a lot more information on our websites. What you see here is what is going to be available to us when the school year begins on August 30th in green. So we will have a road that is passable. That will be our bus lane. So that's why we're using the old kiss and ride loop at the high school for parent drop off and pickup for the high school. So if you would stay out of this lane, that's going to be really important because it's for buses. And you'll note that the Woodruff, which is the front of the school, will have a passable, walkable area as well. Students can then go into the front of the school. And then if you have a middle schooler you're dropping off, that middle schooler can also walk through the high school to get to the middle school. All right, I'm almost there. You guys still awake? You're doing great. Thank you so much for hanging with us. All right, so a couple of questions that I hope got answered, but these are some of the questions that came in on the website. And the first is, will you require vaccinations for teachers and staff and students? We are continuing to gather information about vaccination status of our teachers. As I mentioned, I think twice, as of today, we believe there are only 3 people that haven't been vaccinated in the classrooms, and we're working with those staff to get them either vaccinated or be tested. And then students, we haven't made a decision about whether or not students will be required to be vaccinated. At this point in time, though, I would highly encourage anyone who's eligible to get the vaccine to please do get the vaccine. I would love to see all of our kids get the vaccine. Will we create more space at lunch for students? Hopefully that was clear. We are going to do. Are we going to require masking for PE? Inside, yes. Outside, no. And that is an order from the health commissioner. All inside students during school days must be masked. Athletes need to wear masks. Indoor sports, if you're vaccinated after school as part of a VHSL sport. If you're vaccinated, you don't. But if you aren't vaccinated, you do. Outside, it's not necessary to wear a mask. Are we considering moving to hybrid or concurrent teaching approaches like last year? Only in the worst case scenario. At this point, we are planning to be in school 5 days a week. We will do some live streaming if students have to be out for a very brief period of time, but our intention is to be here 5 days a week. Why isn't there concurrent teaching and full-time online instruction available to students? I think I answered that one. How will non-concurrent instructional delivery model for remote students meet the requirement that gifted students work daily with their intellectual and academic peers? We are going to be offering 5 days of full-time instruction in school. We do not offer any other model of instruction. If a student is out, they're out for a brief period of time just while a contact tracing or potentially an isolation is in place. And those students will be able to live stream and will be with their peers through that live stream. And then how can parents of gifted remote learners, remote students, access the continuity of learning plans for their children? Again, our gifted students are like all of the other students. They will have access to classrooms and will be 5 days a week in person. And if they're out, they'll have access to the live stream. Are we planning to do contact tracing for exposed students? And if exposed, how long must we stay home? Hopefully I cleared that up with the pauses, isolation, and also quarantining. And then how will lunch be managed? I think I actually put that in there twice. That came up a lot in the questions that we got. And that is going to be done through providing more space. So I think we got to most of the questions that did come through. Again, if you have questions, you certainly can. I would highly recommend at this point that any questions you have be directed to your particular school site, because each school site is going to handle lunches differently. Each school site is going to handle classroom arrangements differently. You got tonight, what is the top level school division's approach to this? If you have additional questions, I would really recommend that you send those specific questions to your school principal or school counselor. If you have questions about the division, certainly invite you to send those to reopening@fccps. Just in terms of future communications, we are committed as a school system to continue to try to reach as many people as possible in as many ways as possible. And we really are committed to trying to meet you where you are. Last year, we tried to communicate. At first, it was twice a week. We were told we were over communicating, which is maybe a good thing. And then so we dialed it back to 1 day a week, and every week we sent you an update about what was happening. We will continue to communicate with you primarily through your school newsletters. So I invite you to stay current with your school newsletters. We will have some future town hall meetings. I'd like to do them once a quarter. I know that this is not a traditional town hall because it's very didactic. I get that. But we did invite questions through the website, and I got a ton of them. So thank you for those. We might do something similar again in about a month and a half. I will hold monthly office hours with the superintendent at a local establishment, TBD. You can always follow me on Twitter at Peter Noonan. I do try to post stuff there. You can go to our website. We have communications on the mobile app. The morning announcements will be up and running soon. We do a lot of text messaging through that as well, and are using Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as a school division. We also have school newsletters. We are going to utilize the Falls Church News Press a little bit more this year. And then you can also find us in local and national media. But there on this list are probably 9, 10 different ways that we communicate with you. So I would invite you to pick 1 or 2 or 3, really try to follow those, because you will get the best information if you keep up with us as we move forward. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is 1 hour of straight talking by Peter Noonan. So I really appreciate you. I appreciate your families. I hope I got to as many questions that came through. I think I got to all of them. It takes all of us to get this work done, and we wouldn't be able to do it without you. So I appreciate you very much. I know the school division does as well. And here's to a really great next Monday and starting of school. Have a great evening. Good night.